Welcome to FCTV Podcast. I am here with Dan Diorio, who is Vice President of State Policy for the Data Center Coalition. Dan brings more than 16 years of state and federal government affairs and public policy experience. Over the years, he's handled a wide range of issues, from energy to environment to education and immigration, labor, transportation. Today, he's focused on the fastest growing parts of the digital economy, data centers, and the infrastructure needed to power AI, cloud computing, and the internet itself. Dan, thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Great. So let's talk data centers, right? Is it all about AI, or is it like what, I know there's massive growth in the number of data centers we're seeing, but it isn't just AI, is it? I mean, because that's not even real yet. I mean, it's sort of real, but yeah.
It is not just AI. I think that's one of the biggest misperceptions I see or that I hear out there is, oh, all of this is AI and it's just ChatGPT or, it's Terminator, it's Skynet, that kind of, very cliche stuff. But, the average household has 21 connected devices. When you start to add them all up, you add up your laptops, your phones, your smart watches, multiple smart TVs if you've cut the cord, your Nest thermostat, your Ring doorbells, your garage doors, your lights. My oven's connected to Wi-Fi. I can preheat it from here if I really wanted to. And that comes in handy when you got to get those chicken nuggets in a row when you come back from soccer practice.
I hear you, yeah.
But all of that requires digital infrastructure. And that's really what's driving the vast majority of the data center build out. The vast majority of data centers being built today and put in service today are for cloud infrastructure. AI is less than a quarter of current compute. According to Bain. Now, it's a growth driver, there's no questions, and it has broad ranges of applications throughout the economy. And I mean, AI being used to detect water leaks in systems, being used for healthcare applications, being used to optimize the energy grid. So it's a tremendous growth opportunity. But really, data centers are everything that we do every day, and it's the backbone of the 21st century economy.
Right. And I guess, how much more growth are we expected to see as AI becomes a bigger thing and more of a reality?
Well, according to McKinsey, we're expected to reach 80 gigawatts of data center demand and data center needed infrastructure by 2030. That's up from 24 gigawatts in 2024. So we're looking at an over tripling of the amount of digital infrastructure that we need. But that's reflective of all of us. It's businesses, it's consumers, and what we demand for the products and services that we rely on every day. So we're all driving this, but we're on a very steep demand curve right now. And all indications are that we are behind meeting it. So the industry is building out as fast as it can to meet that demand curve.
And does it matter where they are? Obviously I know data centers need to be closer to power sources and that kind of thing. But in terms of the applications that they're driving, how important is it to geographically be closer to where the end users are? Does latency, I would imagine a lot of applications that does play a factor. So is that kind of important?
Yeah, latency is absolutely important. And it's going to depend on the applications there. But, historically, that's why data centers have been concentrated more in sort of urban and suburban areas, is because you need access to the network. And the network, runs through those areas. You have major fiber lines. And that allows you then to have low levels of latency for certain applications. So how fast data travels from point A to point B. If you have an app or something like that, you need to make a financial transfer. You want that to go through quickly. And say you got to pay your rent on time or anything like that. You want that to go through in a timely manner. I mean, I'm old enough to remember buffering, right? On something as simple as a video, when it would take 30 minutes to really download and buffer. Now, if you have video buffers for about 15 seconds, my kids kind of lose their mind a little bit. They're so used to having it instantly. So latency matters. I think what's very clear, though, is that as we see the infrastructure get better, especially on the fiber side and the broadband side, we are able to address latency issues even as data centers move further and further out from those urban and suburban areas, as they move into more rural areas where you have available land, you have power infrastructure, and you have the ability to bring all the significant economic benefits that data centers bring to those rural communities. So that's where you see the intersection here between data centers and fiber and broadband, is as the fiber and broadband infrastructure gets better, that means data centers can now go out to areas where they have more space to be able to develop at a larger scale.
And where land is cheaper.
Where land is cheaper, certainly. But, data centers are a far more efficient way of doing all the computing, processing, and storage that we need. By aggregating this all together and leveraging economies of scale, you're able to achieve significant efficiencies, especially in energy. So as you have more space and you have cheaper land, you're able to build at a larger scale, and it's just a far more efficient way of doing all the computing, processing, and storage that we need.
So having bigger data centers is more efficient to
It
what?
For energy.
Okay, but
Yeah.
like it compared to what though? Like say doing it like on your own device at home, or having like smaller centers
Yep.
more distributed? Like what is that compared to? More efficient than what?
Well, we all used to have disaggregated computing needs. We either had the big towers under our desks for our storage, or you had a server closet down in the basement of your building. I can remember one that we had in an office, and the door was half hanging open all the time, and the
Because it was so hot.
It
I
was so
remember
hot.
those too.
Yeah, the climate alarm was going off constantly. It would get too cold, then it would get too hot, too cold, too hot. So as we aggregated this all together, and we saw the advent of cloud, so just far bigger capacity for storage, then we saw significant efficiencies achieved with that. From 2010 to 2018, computing output rose 550%, while energy consumption only rose 6%. So this is a far more efficient way of doing all of that and aggregating it all together and leveraging economies of scale. And while I know we're in just a higher growth period right now than we were from 2010 to 2018, the principle still holds true.
All right. So we are in a high growth period. I feel like that's all people are talking about, AI and this, onslaught of data centers. I mean, are we kind of in a bubble here, or should we be concerned that they'll build it and people won't come? Like what, I mean, we've been through booms and busts before. Like, do you see this cycle happening again here as it relates to AI and data centers?
Well, I do think it's important that we hear a lot of comparisons to the .com boom, in the late 90s, early 2000s.
I lived through it. I was there. Yeah.
What I think is clear, though, is that this is physical infrastructure. This is steel in the ground. And we need this physical infrastructure for, our entire economy. So I think it's different in that manner from the .com boom, in that you actually need this physical product, this physical building. Well, representing the leading data center owners and operators. So within DCC's membership, we have all the large hyperscalers. We have leading multi-tenant data centers, large end users of data center capacity. We're constantly recalibrating to demand. We're constantly reevaluating and making sure that we are building out appropriately. We don't want to overbuild, because then we have stranded assets too, just like a utility would if you build a generating station that's not used. But then if we underbuild, then we're not meeting demand and we're not providing the right types of services. So we're constantly recalibrating to ensure that we build out appropriately. But it is fair to say that we are very challenged by what I would deem new entrants to the marketplace. And it's hyperbolic, but it's not too far off to say that you have companies or folks that were building residential homes 6 months ago that are now trying to be a data center developer. And that can present a lot of challenges because they don't have the experience and sophistication to know exactly how projects scale up, how to engage with communities, ultimately how this project develops over time. So that's the one, I think, really challenging aspect of this whole discussion about a bubble, is just, who's legit and who's not. And representing, again, just the leading owners and operators, I feel like we have the track record and the experience here, but it's challenging, making sure that communities especially, but regulators, utilities, grid operators can distinguish between projects that will come to fruition and projects that won't.
I didn't even know that was a thing. So the guy down the street who was building which, by the way, we need more new homes. But I guess, trying to get into the biz of also building data centers. I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah, it's, we sort of, again, hyperbolic, right? We say like two guys in a pickup truck with some land.
Right.
But that, that's skewing the market quite a bit as folks look to get that will serve letter from the utility and then potentially sell it off. So we've worked with utilities to say, here are things that you should consider. Commercial readiness verification, we call it. Who is this company? Do they have a track record of building? How well capitalized are they? How do you have the decision points that you can recognize that show a legitimate project versus a project that's unlikely to come to fruition? A speculative project, if you will.
Right. So, Dan, let's talk about supply chains, because I think as what I've been hearing from folks is, as data centers are building out, They need a lot of the same components and a lot of the same equipment and resources that all the ISPs who are trying to very quickly build out these fiber networks, especially with all their BEAD money, from that federal program to build these things. Is there some tension there between the ISP, fiber industry, and data center builders competing for resources?
Well, there definitely are supply chain constraints. And I know as an industry, the data center industry, we are very concerned about ultimately the availability in the supply chain. How do you plan? How do you plan for steel in the ground infrastructure with actually getting the infrastructure that you need for that facility? So I think there is probably some tension there just with the supply chain constraints that we have, workforce constraints that we have. So it's important, I think, that the two industries all work together to ensure that we're right sizing investments appropriately, but also that we're working to foster, more manufacturing of all the supplies that we need.
But when you look at also some of the global things happening with supply chains, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got tariffs that could potentially be a factor, and now you've got a war in Iran that just seems to have made everything worse. How do you plan for that? And is that a factor? Will that slow some of this growth or make it more expensive?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question prices are going up because of inflation, because of tariffs, because of other world events and global economic constraints. So it is important, I think, that both industries can work together to establish clear supply chains, that we encourage domestic manufacturing where we can. And that ultimately, I think, we are all right-sizing our investments appropriately to get these supplies when we can. It goes back, I think, to that concern about speculative projects, right? Who's within the queue? You could say that for electricity. You could say that in the supply chain as well. So it's ensuring that we're all right-sizing appropriately, and we're all factoring that in and planning appropriately. But also just domestic manufacturing policies are going to be key in that as well.
Okay. All right. And I want to talk to you about some of the backlash against data centers, right? It's almost like it's become this dirty word in some communities. First of all, let me just ask you, how has the backlash affected the industry? Is it slowing down any of the builds of these new data centers, or what are you seeing? What kind of impact are we seeing?
I think it is slowing down data center development. There's no question about that. We see projects taking in longer and longer to come to fruition. We see some projects that are withdrawn, some projects that don't move forward, and you have to reevaluate and go find a different site to develop on that may fit that community's needs a bit better. But I think what's really clear is that it is absolutely fair for communities to be asking questions, to want to know more about these projects. These are places where people live and work and where their kids go to school. So it's incumbent upon, I think, everyone to have fact-driven and data-driven conversations, around all of these important issues. And ultimately, I think it's up to communities then to ensure that this product or this development, meets their needs and meets their economic development needs. But I think we all need to come together to figure out ways where we can foster development, and that's economic development, not just for data centers, but for all industries within that community that ultimately, ends up being a strong benefit to the community as well.
So, well, what do you say, though, to some of the concerns? For example, the idea that it's going to drive up rates on electricity, or that it's going to use too much water, or have other environmental impacts. I mean, I guess let's take electricity first. I mean, how do you address that concern when you're talking to communities?
It's easy, I think, for an individual to see a data center go up and see their bill go up and think this is one for one. This absolutely has to be one for one. But I think it's actually far more complicated than that. We just come out of about 20 years of flat load growth. And now we have load growth on our system from data centers, from advanced manufacturing, from electrification. The biggest source of load growth in California, according to legislators, is data centers, but according to basically everybody else, is electrification in the state. So it comes down to 20 years of load growth, and that's 20 years of not investing in our energy infrastructure. There's just needed upgrades. It's poles, it's wires, it's transformers, needed maintenance in the system for reliability, but safety. Wildfire mitigation in the West is a huge cost driver right now. But I think what's clear is as we see large loads come on the system, they provide a clear investment signal for utilities to invest in the grid, but they also bear the burden of investing in that grid. And we can spread the fixed costs out over on those larger users, and larger users pay for it, and they're happy to pay for it.
Well, I was just going to ask you, because I know there are some communities that are saying like, for example, I live in Pennsylvania, and I think they just were talking about or just passed something in the legislature that, they're going to make these big data center builders pay higher rates or pay their way and for the data center and the upgrade of the networks. Is that fair? Do you think
it's absolutely fair?
Okay.
But we need to make sure though that we level set, which is there's no evidence to suggest data centers are not paying their full cost of service and are driving up rates. I mean, we see in a place like Indiana, where Indiana Michigan Power has said we're lowering rates because of data center revenue coming in. Georgia Power, same thing. PG&E in California, we've kept rates 11% lower because of data centers. DTE Energy in Michigan, we don't need a rate increase because of data centers coming into our system. So there's tremendous opportunity here to put downward pressure on rates. But absolutely, data centers are committed to paying their full cost of service for electricity. We know it happens in Virginia. We know it happens, it's been proven in Arizona, and we'll continue to lean in and ensure that we're paying our full cost of service. The bill in Pennsylvania, unfortunately, I think would make it it would create just a short-term, not long-term durable policy that ultimately makes it really challenging to operate in Pennsylvania. And I think that's part of our broader concern is that would shut the Pennsylvania market off while it's just now developing.
Yeah. Is that a state that you're looking at?
Very much.
Yeah. Okay. So I got that right.
Yes,
I mean,
you did.
This is this is from my day-to-day NPR listening that I heard that. And I thought very relevant to my conversation that I'm going to be having here about my hometown. So what about some of the other concerns, though? I mean, do we know what the environmental impacts are? And should we be concerned about it? And what's the data center industry doing to lessen those environmental concerns?
Well, stakeholder engagement is key. And really, I think helping answer questions about what this development is and what it isn't. It's disappointing, I think, when I see headlines that say data centers guzzle water with no quantitative data behind it. That's a qualitative statement with no quantitative data. Because what we see is that data centers are amongst the most efficient water users in the economy. We use less water than semiconductor manufacturing. We use less water than food and beverage. We use less water than what's lost to water leaks in municipal water systems. We see a place like Virginia. 83% of data centers use as much, if not less, water than a large office building. That's the largest market in the world. In Arizona, top 5 market in the country, we use less water than craft beer and golf courses in the state. So it's really, you need to put it in context and need to put it in perspective. This is an industry that's been deploying water efficient technologies for years. They're not novel, they're not new, they are well understood, and they've been actively deployed. And then what we see is that really there are trade-offs between energy and water. If you use more water to cool, you will use less electricity. If you use more electricity to cool, you will use less water. So you need to find the balance between the two, because actually using water can allow you to be significantly more energy efficient. But these decisions aren't made in a vacuum. They're made based on the local climate. They're made based on the local water availability, working with the water infrastructure providers in that community to ensure that they won't stress local water supplies. So we really need to have that fact-based and data-driven conversation about how data centers are using resources and how they continue to use resources wisely. It's absolutely fair to ask the question, though. And then, data centers are really committed to sustainability. I mean, these are the leading companies that are the top procurers, corporate clean energy procurers in the economy right now, responsible for half of all corporate clean energy procurement in 2024, 84% from January through July of last year. And so this is an industry that's leading the way, has strong sustainability goals, and most importantly, data centers don't get a free pass. Just like any other development, they have to ensure that they're protecting resources, that they're permitted appropriately, and that they're being a good environmental steward in their community.
That's great. So just to wrap things up here, I mean, what would you say that the benefits are for communities having data centers in their backyard?
What we see is significant amounts of jobs on the construction side, but those construction side jobs turn into long-term jobs as crews get contracted for multiple sites. hey, this used to be a 2 to 3 year job, and now it's going to provide me 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of work as I move from building to building on a campus or site to site for a particular company. Then when data centers are up and operational, you have significant business ecosystem impacts. We depend on local electricians and plumbers and HVAC techs. For every one job in a data center, 4.5 jobs are supported elsewhere in the economy. So there's tremendous opportunities for communities to grow their workforce. But also, these are good paying jobs. And most importantly, what we see, these are significant sources of revenue for local communities, especially. That revenue goes into schools, it goes into infrastructure, it goes into services. So this is a tremendous opportunity for communities to grow their tax base, for data centers to invest in their communities, and to really have an economic development project that will, I think, fit a lot of communities' needs really well by not straining their existing infrastructure, but giving really a lot back. So, I think data centers are an essential component of the 21st century economy, and they're economic drivers. There's important questions to be asked, and I think we look forward to engaging with stakeholders to answer those questions. But the U.S. needs to remain the world leader in this technology. This is innovative technologies. We need to keep pace with other countries. This is global economic competitiveness, but it's national security. This is all of our data. This is my financial data, my healthcare data. I want it stored here. If I can't have it stored down the street from me, it's got to be stored in my state or my country.
All right. Okay. Well, I think you made a good case for that. Yeah.
I try.
Well, thank you so much. It was great conversation. I look forward to hearing more from you in the future and see where this data center boom is going. So thanks a lot. That's it for FCTV.